So just to begin, you can start by introducing yourself, and then we can talk about the politics of Pakistan.
My name is Adam Pal, and I'm based in Lahore. And I work for International Marxist Tendency. And we are working in Pakistan to build a Marxist organization for a socialist revolution and socialist transformation of society in this country. And our ideas are those ideas of Marx, Engels, Lenin, and Trotsky. And we are building an organization on similar lines as Lenin built the Bolshevik Party in Russia and carried out a socialist revolution in 1917 under leadership of Lenin and Trotsky and the Bolshevik Party.
Great, thanks so much. And I guess to begin, my main kind of question or topic that I'm curious about is the vote of no confidence against Prime Minister Imran Khan. I'm curious if you can explain kind of from your perspective, from a Marxist perspective, the lead up, as you did in an article for In Defense of Marxism, of what led to this situation, what led to this no confidence vote. The role of the United States, I guess, in Pakistan's politics as well, and how this potentially plays a role. But yeah, I'm curious just to explain, because this is such recent news that I think a lot of people in the US don't know exactly what's happened and are curious.
Yes, sir. The recent update is that Imran Khan has been ousted from power, and he's no longer now the Prime Minister of the country. A vote of no confidence was held in the parliament in Islamabad last night, and with a majority, and they were able to oust Prime Minister Imran Khan. And tomorrow there will be a new vote for a new Prime Minister, and quite hopefully Shehbaz Sharif will be elected as the Prime Minister of the country. So both Imran Khan and Shehbaz Sharif are, and other parties which are part of this process are all right-wing parties, and are part of the ruling class of this country. And all this, and there is a huge drama actually last night happened because Imran Khan and his party was not aligned to for the vote of no confidence to happen actually in the parliament, and they were delaying the procedure. Actually, they in fact they delayed it for many weeks because the no confidence motion was tabled in 8th of March actually, and under the constitution, and within 2 weeks it should be voted upon, but they were unconstitutionally delaying it, and in the end opposition parties went to the but before that they unconstitutionally dissolved the parliament and dissolved the provincial assembly, tried to dissolve the provincial assemblies, and announced new elections. But then opposition parties went to the Supreme Court and got a decision in their favor, which said that the voting should happen. And yesterday it was the decision that at 10 in the morning the session should start and the voting should happen. But in the end, the speaker was from PTI, and he still was not following the Supreme Court decision. And the date was now going to change at late night, 12 o'clock. So then, for the first time, or very few times, we have seen that Supreme Court started opening at 12 o'clock in the night, and it was being said that speaker might get arrested because he has done the contempt of court and not about, which was a huge thing. So then the speaker was got afraid of getting arrested, and he ran away and resigned from the post and gave his position to another person of the opposition party. And then so there was a lot of drama, but the real news today is published in BBC Urdu, in which they are talking about that the actual thing, which is what is your question, that what was the actual thing going to happen. So it was actually the army who will become the army chief of the country, because that is the most powerful position in the Pakistan, and prime minister, president, minister, chief ministers, that are all secondary, or you can say mostly puppets in this country and have not much power. The real power lies with the army chief. So all this drama, all this political maneuvering and fight and conspiracy theories and allegations and counter allegations was around the appointment of the army chief. So there were two contenders, and the sitting one wanted an extension, and the other people who were candidates for the job, they were maneuvering that somehow. So the BBC Urdu actually has reported that in the end, Imran Khan late night issued a notification for the removal of the army chief, which was not actually intended and was not obliged by his own secretaries and defense secretary and other things. And in the end, the armed forces intervened and took the things in their own hand and then managed somehow to get what they wanted and ousted Imran Khan from the Prime Minister house, and he went back to his home. So this was all the drama going on, and this is the real power struggle going on. And this has nothing to do with the masses of the country, the working class of the country, or the people of the country, the conspiracy theories and counter allegations. These are just like gimmicks and lies and conspiracies, and just to hide the real sentiments, which is a naked power struggle between two factions of the state.
Thank you so much for that. And as you wrote in your article, you talked about the army being the real power behind the scenes in all of this. So the army is deciding who gets to remain in power and who doesn't. And how do you think the army played a role in this crisis? And as you're saying, it's triggered by Imran Khan's decisions about the army. And so how do you think that they kind of stepped in order to remove this government?
This is nothing new in Pakistan, and since last 75 years, since this country came into being, this is happening time and again. There has been many martial laws in countries, and half of the period of the country is been under military dictatorships and generals ruling the country. And when they are not in direct rule, they are indirectly controlling all these things. So all of these things is very common knowledge in Pakistan, and everybody knows internationally as well that the army is a very strong position. And similarly, if you read analysis on different websites or papers or talk shows, everyone is talking about that. Even when in 2018, Imran Khan came into power, so from the very first day, he is being called as a selected prime minister. And selected means that he has been selected by the armies, chosen by the generals, and he was propped up for many years as an opposition leader through media campaigns, through ground road, grassroots sports, and through different politicians in different cities being transferring their loyalties from other parties to Imran Khan under the pressure of army. So this was common knowledge was happening in broad daylight, and through that maneuvering and you can say managed elections or rigged elections, he came to power in 2018. And at that time, he was in very good books and was in very close relations. It was being called that they are on the same page. But then they developed differences between themselves and for the next transfer of the power and all this. Now the opposition parties are doing the same thing, and they are now in good books. And so this is like 180-degree turn. And this is nothing new in Pakistan.
And you talked about in the article how it kind of is based upon the president deciding whether or not to give a renewal of the term of the army chief, or whether to pick a new army chief. So there's kind of a struggle over who's going to be in charge of the army, basically. ultimately, I think as you kind of conclude in your analysis, it doesn't matter for the working class of Pakistan who's in charge, because all the parties are, it's all the ruling class, it's all the bourgeoisie. But I wonder what they do disagree on, and what the kind of ruling class is having disputes about. Like, would anything change if one person in the army came to power or another came to power? And how has, because you write about how Khan kind of represented himself as a new person in politics. He'd be new. He'd, you know, be a change. Blah blah blah. What is the opposition saying that they're going to do new instead of Imran Khan? And how are they trying to present themselves as a new, better alternative?
Uh, uh, Better alternate. Imran Khan's last 3.5 years has been a disaster for the country. If you see the economy, 50% depreciation of the currency in last 3.5 years, and on more than 4% in just last 1 month. And inflation is now officially at around 12.7%, but unofficially or in reality, it is quite double from that. And similarly, unemployment rose to highest level, unprecedented level in history. Millions of people got out from jobs, and poverty, hunger, and disease reached unprecedented level. So there is no no point to prove that Imran Khan is a failure, or he has been a disaster. It is quite, everybody, even blinds can see that he has failed. So that is why actually Imran Khan tried to during this power struggle, and for trying to clinging with power, he tried to mobilize people around him through calling it American conspiracy and things like that. But in the end, he couldn't get any big crowds around him. Uh, First, he announced that I will gather around 1 million people in Islamabad and show my strength. And in the end, he got just to 5,000 chairs for the people who were arriving. And because he was in power, so in Pakistan, when you are in power, you can force government servants and public sector employees to come to attend this public meeting of the prime minister or a chief minister. So despite using all the power, all the resources, all the money he had, he couldn't gather more than few thousand people. And similar is the situation with the opposition parties. They have in the previous decades they had different sections of society supporting these parties, but in recent years they have lost their support, and they are also hanging in the air, and they couldn't also gather much big gatherings. Like the People's Party tried to have a long march from Karachi to Islamabad, but not more than few thousand people joined them, and mostly were party activists or hired people who were being paid to come to attend the rally and giving a very high amount of money. Similarly, Shehbaz Sharif's party also tried to organize public meetings, but not more than few thousand people came out. So everybody can see that all parties are failures. And Imran Khan, who posed himself as a new entrant, but all his team members, all his ministers, all his advisors were most of them were old people, corrupt politicians from other parties who had changed their loyalties. And similarly, his policies were not any different from the previous governments, like following the dictates from IMF, World Bank, the economic policy. He was appointing finance ministers on the dictations of IMF and World Bank, and they were not members of his party. They were coming from IMF side. And similarly, Governor of State Bank is an employee of IMF, which was appointed by Imran Khan. And similarly, many other policies on ground. Rather, one of the most disastrous policy was the privatization of health sector, where all the public sector hospitals are being privatized at a very, very huge level. So the already 80% of population in Pakistan doesn't have access to scientific health care. And now what remained, and public sector hospitals were already in a very, very poor and a bad shape. You can see two patients or three patients on single bed, no medicines, no doctors in far off areas, and no equipment. So in a very bad shape. And now even those very poor facilities have been privatized and has been snatched from. people. So if any person from working class or even middle class gets sick, or he can't get treatment anywhere unless he have huge amounts of money. The prices of medicines reached like 400%, 500% rise many times in previous years. So all there was a huge disaster, and people were really suffering in all these years. So there was no big argument needed, or no big political discussion needed that Imran Khan is a failure and he needed to be ousted.
Thank you. And another topic I'd like to kind of focus on is you wrote in the article a lot, really in depth and really revealing about the IMF's role in Pakistan. So the IMF basically announced that they would stop giving loans to Pakistan unless a new government was formed, which seems like a pretty outright interference in the politics of the country. In addition, as you write, they privatized or they took control of the central bank of Pakistan. And they already, as you wrote, had control because the governor of the bank was an IMF lackey. But let's talk a little bit about what the IMF, its role in Pakistan, what it's been doing, and how much it's really destroyed the economy, and how much it's destroyed, any potential government support for the people. You mentioned privatizing the health industry, but what role does the IMF play in consistently bailing Pakistan out of its financial crisis, but in the process really destroying the country?
Yes, yes. Yes, Pakistan is now the topmost country in the world which has got the highest number of packages from IMF, right? I think around 22. Argentina and Pakistan are also almost on the same level. And in all these packages, they have just apparently they say that they are going to bail out the economy, or they are going to assist the economy with the finance and in emergency needs. But in fact, they are bloodsuckers, or the on interest, through interest payments and through other controls. It is just like a colonization, you can say, or an imperialist policy in which the country is dictated through all these arrangements or packages. And 50% of the budget today, the Pakistan goes in debt payments. So when you get a loan, so on a very high interest rate, and the economy doesn't have enough money to pay back the loan and interest rate, so they get uh, new loans to pay the interest, and then they get new loans then to pay the interest, and this is a whole cycle, an unending cycle. And all this burden is on the poor class, on the working class, which has no access to health, no access to education, to poverty, living in extreme poverty, living in extreme misery and destitution. And if you see that over the period of time, there have been huge taxation. Pakistan is one of the country which has a huge ratio of indirect taxation. If you see that the taxes on the rich are at a minimum level, or almost at a negligible level in Pakistan, either it is corporates or feudals or banks or multinationals or big capitalists, the income tax, the direct taxation, most of the taxation or the revenue generation is from indirect taxation, which means that the working class, the poor class, gets heavily taxed. For example, there is huge tax on the petrol and diesel when you get it, or electricity, or daily use items like tea or bread or other things you use. So there is indirect taxation, and almost 70% or 80% of the revenue is generated through indirect taxation, and there is very, very negligible tax on the rich people. And being rich in Pakistan is a lot more luxury than in America or Europe, because at least there are some taxes, though there are also people dodging the regimes and getting offshore accounts. But in Pakistan, it is very easy. And similarly, the policies, the whole of the wealth produced in Pakistan, most of it ends in either the interest payments of IMF, World Bank, and other financial institutions, or there is loot and plunder. by the local ruling class, and they stash it in Swiss banks or European and American banks, and they continue to implement IMF policies. And similarly, the national budget of Pakistan is dictated by IMF. Even the provincial budgets of different provinces are dictated by IMF, and IMF employees actually draft the whole budget and decide that which tax needed to be increased, which tax needed to be reduced, and which financial policy. And even the finance minister is appointed by the IMF, and he decides that what expenditure needs to be done and what is not to be done. Similarly, there have been many other privatization policy was first introduced in 1988, and that was also on the dictates of IMF. There has been huge privatization going on for last 30 or more years, and banks have been privatized, and uh, telecommunication sector, power generation sector, and many other sectors have been privatized at a very, very cheap prices. They were recently. PI, Pakistan International Airlines, is being privatized now. Railways is being privatized, and millions of people have lost their jobs in the process. And out of this process, what happens that the private sector or the multinationals or the bosses got huge profits out of that, and those departments are ruined, and they are used for blood sucking of the consumers or the common people, and their livelihoods are destroyed, and there's a huge damage to the, like the health sector. Almost the hospitals will be closed for the poor people. Similarly, railways and uh, airlines and other sectors will not be able to use for common people. So this is the whole project. This is all dictated by IMF. And for example, there is a huge privatization started in 90s of the energy sector or the power generation sector, where private companies were allowed to, for the first time, to install power generation plants in Pakistan. And there were such corrupt contracts, or you can say such contracts in the favor of companies, that even if those companies are not producing electricity, then even government was forced to pay them money because they have brought foreign investment in Pakistan. And now, and also those power generation plants were entitled to import oil on without any duties and custom duties and charges. So now what these power generation plants are doing, so they are importing oil without any duty or taxes, and selling that oil in the market on high rates, and also not producing electricity because they are getting money just for installing the capacity and not producing the electricity. So there is a huge circular debt in Pakistan that is called, and the consumer, electricity consumers, has to pay all these expenses and loot and plunder of. So there in every sector. Then there was a Chinese investment on very high interest rates and everything. So Pakistan economy is just like a hostage of all these international financial institutions, and the ruling class just takes a cut in that, kickbacks and commission, and common people have to suffer.
Well, thanks so much for that. And that I think explains a little bit more about the IMF's role in the situation. Kind of the next thing you discussed in the article was the American role in this. So, I mean, of course, like the American role has been through the IMF predominantly, but you talk about Afghanistan, for example, as kind of a critical moment in this. And the Americans, believe that the Pakistan did not really take their side fully in the situation in Afghanistan, fully against the Taliban, for example. So how has this played a role in the Americans sort of wanting to punish the government to kind of assert, fuller control? And how is this kind of representing a conflict over whether Pakistan will be fully under the control of the United States? So you talk about the opposition faction has recently been appealing to the United States and saying the US can help solve our crisis, the US can come bail us out. So yeah, what has the role of America been in this crisis?
First of all, America, for last 75 years, American imperialism has played a very important role in Pakistan, and Pakistan has been used by American imperialism for its policies in the whole South Asian region and Central Asia and Middle East and against China as well. So Pakistan has a long history. For example, the dollar jihad in Afghanistan against the Soviet Union. So that was mainly sponsored by Americans and CIA, and Pakistan was fighting on behalf of Americans and was the main post or the from where the this jihad started in Afghanistan. And Americans at that time pumped huge amounts of money and dollars in Pakistan, and they needed a strong army and strong institutions. And at that time, that was the martial law dictatorship of General Zia, which had ousted Bhutto and hanged him, who was elected prime minister at that time through the courts actually uh, at that time. So the Americans have a very long history there, and that continued for many years. And then in 2001, we started the war, so-called war on terror was unleashed in Afghanistan, and the NATO forces and American forces landed in Afghanistan. And at that time, Pakistan was also considered as an ally or a NATO ally at that time, and was huge amounts of money was being invested in that war, and that war money also was coming to Pakistan. And at that time, the Pakistani ruling class was bathing in dollars, was very happy and was overjoyed. And at that time, the real estate sector in Pakistan was expanding. Pakistan economy at one point reached very high levels of growth at that time, and some finance sector was expanding and many other things. And black economy in Pakistan is a big issue, and that was growing at that time. So after the withdrawal of American forces from Afghanistan, or a gradual withdrawal over the period of time in which dollar stopped and was coming less and less, Pakistan economy was also feeling the heat. And Americans were also annoyed because they were losing the war and they were getting a humiliating defeat in Afghanistan. So it was not because of Taliban, but general situation in Afghanistan, and was there a general hatred amongst public and population against imperialist intervention and the war which has killed hundreds of thousands and displaced millions. So there was a general hatred and uh, anger against that war, which led to the downfall and crisis of U.S. imperialism. And in the end, Americans were uh, talking with Taliban and the Pakistani state to rescue them out of this situation and give them a face saving, or which they could claim as victory. But in the end, that couldn't be realized. And in the end, we saw the very chaotic scenes in Kabul, in which the American embassy in Kabul had to be evacuated in emergency through helicopters on the rooftop, and many people were killed. And that was a very chaotic scene in Kabul. So everybody in the whole world could see the relative weakness and importance of the American imperialism. So the Americans were not happy that the Pakistani ruling class or the army leadership hasn't done their job. And it was very common in Pakistan for last almost 10 years or even more that Americans are saying, do more, that we are paying you, we are giving you dollars, we are giving you strategic support, whatever you want, but get us out of this. So all of these situations were creating, you can say, rifts between the American imperialism and the Pakistani ruling class, and they had very strong relations in the past. The Americans had relied heavily on the Pakistani ruling class to do their dirty work and do their imperialist support. But whenever they saw someone is not fit for their job, just like when General Zia came into power, it was clear that Americans were supporting him. And when Bhutto was hanged, it was openly called that General Zia had the support of American imperialism. But when General Zia's plane was crashed and he died in a plane crash, it was also said that Americans were behind that. So their Americans have been in behind a regime change. It's a long history, and today also we can see that people are alleging that and Imran Khan is publicly saying that Americans are behind the regime change, which is quite possible. But there are internal rifts as well among the ruling class. There is a rift among the ruling class of Pakistan as well, and there is a rift between Pakistani ruling class and the American imperialism. And there are rifts in, and also there is now is a China factor also there, which was not there in the past. And Chinese ruling class, China is a capitalist country, and the project they have in Pakistan is we have written that that is an imperialist project. So there are rifts between different powers in the world now. There are rifts in the ruling class, and at the end of the day, it represents the crisis of the capitalist system on which this whole edifice is based. And the capitalist, it is a crisis of the capitalist system in the whole world, where the economy in America is weakening. There is a financial crisis in America. There is a crisis in the American ruling class as well. We saw in the events of Trump and Biden and attacks on the American Congress, and there have been huge movements like the Black Lives Matter and other. So American imperialism as a whole is weakening, and they are not able to dictate in their terms in just like a smooth way in the past. And there are people not happy with them, and they are talking against them. Their own people talking against them. So this is the kind of situation which shows the weakness of the capitalist system and weakness of the ruling class as a whole.
Yeah, thanks so much for that. And I guess with that too, I'm curious about the role, you talk a little bit in the article about the role that the Russia and Ukraine conflict has played in this crisis, and kind of the positions of the ruling class and the political ruling class in Pakistan on Russia and the Ukraine crisis. So yeah, I'm curious if you can talk a little bit more about how this factored in, the different positions that are being taken and are still being taken now, in rhetoric.
Yes, there has been a inflation. I told you that there were rifts between the American imperialism and the Pakistani ruling class over the issues in Afghanistan, and they are not new. They were like 10, 12 years or even more. They are continuing since the Afghanistan war on terror started. The Americans actually forced Pakistan to enter into that, and Pakistan had different opinions. Like they said that before these people were called jihadis or were called holy warriors by the Americans, and now you are calling them terrorists. So, though we agree, Pakistani General Musharraf at that time, who was the ruler, who agreed with them, but he said that it will not be easy to conduct this operation on ground, and the change of tactics will be they saying difficult, or maybe they were asking more money for that. But with the passage of time, these conflicts grew and grew, and over the period of time, American imperialism was not happy with the Pakistani ruling class. And in the meantime, we see that India has shifted its policy as well and is now more close to America than ever in the past. Actually, before 90s and before the collapse of Soviet Union, India was uh, an ally of Soviet Union and was not in the American sphere of influence, and that gave Pakistan much more leverage and much more closeness to Americans in the whole region. But after India getting closer to America, the Americans changed their policy, and their emphasis and their whole base was around India. And to see the Trump's visit when in India in Modi's rule, and Modi was supporting Trump's election campaign in Texas at one time. So Pakistan's position was weakened at that time. Pakistani ruling class tried to show their importance to America by getting more closer ties with China, with which Americans were not happy, but were tolerating that. And similarly, to show that Americans their uh, importance, they tried to visit Russia, and Russians were needed actually this to stage their own authority and all that. So on the day when Russian uh, army invaded Ukraine, at that time Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan was in Moscow meeting with Putin. And now Imran Khan is saying that I am being ousted from power because I was in Russia and Americans were not happy with that and this and that. So he's trying to build up a conspiracy theory and trying to talk about patriotism and independence and all that. But this is all hollow claims and just mockery, hypocrisy and mockery and has nothing to do in reality. He has served American imperialism and IMF more than any other ruler in the past, and he has been more subservient, more slave-like position than any ruler in the past. And in the future also he will do that, but just to prop up some sport around him to right-wing base, middle class base, and to rally around him. He's using this lies and deceit around him, which has no basis in reality. And he's more subservient to American imperialism, just like the opposition and all that. Just is that he has been failed in last 3.5 years, and there have been huge hatred and anger in the masses against them. And actually, the ruling class was also fearing that there can be a mass movement due to inflation and unemployment and other issues. And through a change of face or change of government, they are using it also using it as a safety valve that people feel like a relief that a new prime minister has come and things might change or might improve and all these things as well. But similarly, they had own differences among themselves and their differences with American imperialism as well.
Thank you
So it
so
is
much.
all contradictions in the society which are now coming to the fore, which were piling up for over the many years.
Thanks. And I'm curious to talk, I guess, in concluding a little bit about the working class movement in Pakistan against all of this, against imperialism, against the ruling class. So you talked in your article a little bit about uh, you know, protests that have been going on in the past couple of months with 30,000, 40,000 workers protesting and not receiving pensions, demanding higher wages. So tell us a little bit about these protests, and then also, what has been the reaction with respect to like protesting against this political crisis? Has there been a wide-scale protest to resist the political games of the ruling class of the United States? Yeah, tell us a little bit about the people's resistance.
Oh no, the working class in Pakistan has very revolutionary traditions. There was a huge revolutionary movement in 1968-69, which ousted a general Ayub at that time, who was a dictator for more than a decade at that time. And there was a general strike in March 1969, which ended in the ousting of power of General Ayub. And since then, there have been huge mass movements, protests, strikes. There against the General Zia's dictatorship, there was very, very militant struggles by the working class and strikes and very heroic acts of sacrifices at that time. Similarly, in General Musharraf's time, we saw the movement of telecommunication workers strike in 2005 by the telecommunication workers and many other struggles by other struggles. So in the last 3 years, there have been many big struggles and strikes and movements against the PTI government by the workers in different sectors of in PIA, Pakistan International Airlines. There have been very, very militant strikes and movements, protests against privatization and attacks by the ruling class. Similarly, in railways, there have been huge protests and movements and struggles. Railway workers have a very militant traditions in not only in Pakistan but in the whole Indian subcontinent, because before trade unions in railway exist before the partition or before the independence of the subcontinent, and actually they were very advanced, played a very advanced role in the independence movement as well. Similarly, there have been strikes in private sector as well for higher wages, and then pensioners are on the move because Pakistani government under PTI has been trying to end the pension system in Pakistan, which will affect like millions of pensioners and widowers across the country, and they will lose their only livelihood and will die in destitution. So there have been protests and movements by the pensioners and all that. The last 2 years, what we have seen is that public sector employees from different departments, either they were from health or from education department, school teachers and others, or different other departments came together and formed an alliance which was called AGIGA, or All Government Employees Grand Alliance. And that was a countrywide alliance, and that had in provinces as well, and at the federal level. Federal sector employees and provincial department employees, they all came together. And in February last year, they held a huge protest in Islamabad, in which around 30,000 or 40,000 workers participated, and they were asking for around 35% increase in their wages. And there was huge tear gas thrown at them. They were beaten by police and they were tortured by police outside the Parliament House in Islamabad. And only 30,000 or 40,000 could reach, but that was the gathering of 30, 40,000. In the provinces or in the cities, there were hundreds of thousands were mobilizing, but all were not going to Islamabad, and they were protesting in their own cities. So in the end, they were successful in many of their demands. And later there were protests in the provincial headquarters as well, and that continued. Protests continued for whole year, and now in February this year as well, there was a huge protest in Islamabad, and a large number of people also gathered there, and most of their demands were also accepted, and now there are protests in provincial capitals for implementation of those demands. And there has been huge mobilization of workers around these demands for higher wages. Then in Karachi, we saw the movement of private sector workers in industrial areas of Karachi like Kurangi and Landi, and they were asking for a rise in the minimum wage, which is a very shamefully low minimum wage by the government, which is uh, not covers actually the just the meal of one person or 2% of a family for 1 month. And apart from that, you have to pay electricity bill, you have to pay rent and other things. So that is very shameful wages, and even that is not implemented in private sector. For example, if 17,000 rupees per month is announced as a monthly minimum wage, but the factory owners are paying 12,000, 12,000 rupees, which is and for a 12 hours day, if without any holidays or vacations or anything. So that is a very brutal conditions in Pakistani private sector, and these private sector is working for the multinationals across the world like Zara or H&M and many other big brands like Nike and Adidas, and there are all the brands in the textile brands or other sportswear and many others are getting their productions from Pakistan. But those products, you know that how expensive they are in America or Europe. But here the workers get less than $1, or even in condition of the private sector is not very good. So there were protests in Karachi uh, last year in August, in 30th August, our organization Red Workers Front organized a protest, and then there were other protests, and after that wages were increased in many sectors, especially in Karachi and different parts, industrial areas near Karachi. Wages were raised, but still there are many millions of workers across the country who are working in very, very poor working conditions, no union rights, no social security, and no health benefits, no education for children, and nothing, and living in very poor conditions. So the struggle continues, and the working class is. And as far as the political situation is concerned, I think the working class has played a very, very conscious role in that. A very high level of consciousness that they have not supported any political party in all this power struggle, and they can understand that this is not for them that they are fighting. They are fighting for getting into power. Either they are putting forward allegations of American conspiracy, of military intervention, of this and that. This is all just fake and a hoax. And working class understand that if even Shehbaz Sharif comes to power or Imran Khan returns to power, they will not get better wages, they will not get better living conditions, they will not get respite from inflation, which is very, very high. So they are indifferent to the whole situation, and we haven't seen any big protests or participation from the working class whatsoever in whole situation. Even the Imran Khan doesn't represent any section of the working class. He represented a very small layer of urban middle class youth, petty bourgeois youth, and similarly, Shehbaz Sharif's party PMLN has bases in the industrialists and shopkeepers and petty bourgeois middle class traders and small industrialists. So they do not represent working class. And at the moment, there is a huge vacuum that there is no political party in the country that represents the working class of this country or have a political working class doesn't have a political representative at this point. And this vacuum will not be left forever, and that might be filled in one way or another.
Well, thank you so much for taking some time to speak with me about the situation. We'll definitely continue following it as it develops because it is a breaking news situation right now. But thank you so much for giving this in-depth analysis of also, that's all kind of the ruling class going at one another, and the workers' issues are still the most important. The problem of imperialism is still very much under the surface, and you have a
And sorry to cut you. If you look at the lifestyle of these party leaders, you will be amazed. And even I think Trump or Biden will be really surprised to see, or they might know that they are living in more like a royal family and even more luxurious life. If you see the house of Imran Khan or Shehbaz Sharif or Zardari, so these are huge mansions and in every city and extreme luxury. On the other hand, the people who are they allegedly represent are living in extreme poverty and destitution.
Yeah, and it's a horrible situation. As you pointed out in your article, the inequality has only gotten worse because of the contest between the ruling class in Pakistan. So thank you so much again. This was a lot of good information. I learned a lot from this conversation. So yeah, thanks so much, and take care. Stay safe. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.